I learnt heaps about Nicole from this bloke I once knew, Scotty. I used to be in the soapies. I'm saying used to because he wasn't acting anymore or anything like that. He told me TV went bad years ago. He was always smartly decked out, probably with stuff from Vinnie's. But his clothes, well, they weren't always washed. And on a stinking hot day, the type of deodorant he wore, didn't always work. He must have been somewhere in his 40s, but he looked heaps older. And he stooped, but when he remembered, he made himself straighten up. Everyone else at the old pub in Bondi that we used to go to thought he was up himself and full of crap. But I liked him. Especially when he'd talk about Nicole, which was pretty often. He lived in I think some sort of granny flat back of some semi. I reckon he wouldn't have paid rent. Probably some lonely lady owned the place. He probably did other services for her instead. Most nights, in the pub, the door would swing open and he'd enter, like some celebrity, slumming it, and look around at the green tiles and the flowery carpet, and wrinkle his nose up at the smells of beers and smokes. And then he'd spot me, and smile this smile, like he was too good for this dump, and he thought so was I. And then I'd start shouting him his beers. He never had a brass razoo, so I always bought the beers, and that was just how it was. This one night, he whinged a bit about the beer, saying it was warm as rat's piss. He always did that. And then he said to me that though he didn't have any talent, he could tell I had plenty. Now, of course I never believed him, and he also never mentioned where my talent lay, but I was young, and I wanted to have talent in something, anything really. And then he went on to tell me, once again, about the first second he'd laid eyes on Nicole, when she was a schoolgirl with red frizzy hair, doing a bit part in some ABC mini-series. He could tell she had talent, and he told her. And that's when she fell in love with him. He was her first. That's why I liked buying beers for Scotty, because when you were with him, he'd tell you about being Nicole's first love. And if you heard it often enough and had enough beers, it sort of felt like if Nicole had been in love with him, then maybe she could fall for you too. See, I admired Scotty's way with women. As for me, as soon as I liked a woman, I got tongue-tied and sweaty talking to her. Scotty, he had the confidence of a star. He'd say something nice even to the plainest woman you ever saw. He believed he could have them all, and he could. Women loved him, but he didn't want any of them, because he'd been spoilt by being loved by the best, by Nicole, all those years ago. He told me, thanks to Nicole, for him, every other woman needed to come with a pack of Viagra. And then he went on, he sort of said, he'd once had the best. And he explained that when a man comes into contact with true greatness of the feminine kind, he's forever happy with the memory. Once, I asked him after lots of beers what it had been like being with Nicole. He said she was a real redhead, and she was shy, and that he was never shy, and that's why he never amounted to much. And then he'd get all misty. According to him, Hollywood tore them apart. That night, there was some girl sitting by herself having a quiet beer, and so, to get his mind off Nicole, I suggested he go up to her, but instead, he dared me to go up to her, but I couldn't. And then he said I was shy, and that I'd amount to something. After he'd leave of an evening, my mates at the pub would stir me, and they'd say Scotty was full of bullshit, and he was just bullshitting me so he could bludgeon beers off me. And they'd say that Scotty wasn't even his real name. And there was no way that someone like Nicole would ever go for no hoper like him. Soon after, they renovated that pub in Bondi, and they made it all smick and expensive. And I stopped going. I've never seen Scotty since. People say he got into trouble and moved up north. But every time I see Nicole up there on the screen, if you look close, she looks a bit sad. And I reckon she misses Scotty just like he misses her.